On Christmas morning, every child in my mother's house got a gift, except my daughter. I stood there in the living room, surrounded by laughter and shredded wrapping paper, watching my 9-year-old hold back tears while my mother said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't deserve to be celebrated." Mila's hands were folded in her lap. Her little fingers were clenched together so tightly I could see the tips turning white. She didn't look up. She didn't speak. She just sat still on the edge of the couch, pretending not to care while every other child unwrapped toys and games in front of her. I felt something twist inside me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I stood there frozen, like I had when I was her age, quiet, small, trained to keep the peace. Benji, my younger brother, looked over at me and then quickly looked away. He had always been good at staying out of things. My mother handed another gift to one of my cousin's boys and smiled as if nothing was wrong. Mila didn't even have a stocking. The silence around her was louder than the holiday music playing in the background. I leaned down and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded without meeting my eyes. That nod, tight, forced, felt like it broke something inside me. She had brought a gift for my mother. She painted it herself, little birds in a winter tree. She was so proud of it. She wrapped it in tissue paper and wrote to Grandma in her neatest handwriting. My mother never opened it. She set it aside like it was junk mail. I kept thinking, why? What could a child do to deserve this? Then the doorbell rang. Everyone went still. It was a little past noon. No one was expecting anyone. My mother frowned. Who would that be on Christmas? She opened the door, and standing there was a man I had never seen before, wearing a heavy winter coat and holding a clipboard. Behind him, 2 people stood with a camera and lights. He looked right past my mother and asked, "Is Mila here?" "We're here for the young hero." That's when everything changed. I didn't want to go. Not really. I told myself it was for Mila, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. It was guilt, obligation. That strange pull we feel toward the very people who've hurt us the most. My mother had invited us to Christmas at her house, and I accepted because I thought maybe, just maybe, things would be different this year. Mila had never spent a full holiday with my side of the family before. She was 9 now, old enough to understand things I used to shield her from. But when she saw the invitation card with the snowflake embossed envelope, her face lit up like she had just been given the key to some magical world. "Grandma invited us?" she asked, eyes wide with surprise. I smiled and nodded, not because I believed it would be good, but because I wanted her to. "She even wrote your name," I said, pointing to the end of the note where my mother had scribbled, "Tell Mila she can come too." Too, like an afterthought. The week before Christmas, Mila spent every afternoon working on a gift for my mother. She had taken a canvas from my art supplies and painted a winter scene, cardinals in a snowy birch tree. It was simple and full of heart. She even made a little wooden frame using popsicle sticks and silver glitter. "She loves birds, right?" she asked me one night. "She used to," I said. I didn't have the heart to tell her that the woman she was painting for never noticed the things made with love. I grew up in that house, a big gray 2-story in the suburbs. From the outside, it looked like a postcard. Wreaths in the windows, white lights strung along the gutters, a glowing nativity set on the front lawn. But inside, it always felt colder than the snow piling up on the sidewalk. My mother, Lorraine, ran her home like a museum. Everything had its place, including emotions, especially emotions. When Mila and I arrived on Christmas Eve, my brother Benji opened the door. He smiled at me, pulled me into a quick hug, and then crouched to say hello to Mila. He was always good to her, even if he didn't know how to stand up to our mother. "Look at you, little artist," he said, pointing to the rolled-up canvas in her hand. "It's for Grandma." She beamed. Benji's smile faltered, just slightly, but he nodded. "She'll love it." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and roast ham. Garland curled around the staircase. Candles flickered on every table, and the tree, 12 feet tall and perfectly trimmed, stood glowing in the corner of the living room. Mila's eyes grew big. She'd never seen anything like it. We lived in a small apartment where our tree sat on top of a milk crate and leaned a little to the left. My mother walked in from the kitchen, wearing a red blouse, pearls, and the exact same stiff smile I remembered from every Christmas as a child. She hugged me the way people do when there's an audience. Then she looked at Mila, scanned her up and down, and said, "You've gotten taller." "Hi, Grandma," Mila said, holding out her gift. My mother didn't take it. "Put it by the fireplace. You can hang your coat in the front hall." I took it from her gently and placed it on the side table. As the evening went on, Mila stayed close to me, clearly trying to figure out where she fit in. The other kids, all cousins she barely knew, chased each other around with toy drones and danced to holiday music in the den. Mila watched, unsure whether she was allowed to join. When I encouraged her, she gave it a try, but she kept looking over her shoulder toward my mother, waiting for approval that never came. At dinner, my mother asked Benji about his new job, Uncle Theo about his recent vacation, and our cousin Kelly about her engagement. She didn't ask me a single question. When Mila started to share a story about the coat drive she helped organize at school, my mother interrupted her to pass the butter. Later that night, Mila curled up next to me on the pull-out couch in the guest room. "Mom," she whispered, "do you think Grandma likes me?" My heart cracked. I pulled her in close. "I think Grandma has a hard time showing love, but I like you more than anyone in the world." She rested her head on my arm, quiet for a moment. I just wanted her to be proud. She should be. I'm proud enough for both of us. Outside, snow was falling. Inside, I held my daughter and promised myself that no matter what happened tomorrow, I would protect that soft, bright heart of hers, even if it meant standing up to the very woman who never protected mine. Christmas morning came with the sound of footsteps running through the house. The kids were already up, tearing into gifts under the massive tree in the living room. Laughter echoed down the hallway. Mila sat up beside me, rubbing her eyes. "Do you think Grandma opened my painting?" she asked. "Let's go see," I said, helping her out of bed. We walked into the chaos together. Wrapping paper covered the floor. A pile of presents sat neatly sorted by name in front of each child. I spotted the painting, still wrapped, still resting on the side table where I had placed it the night before. No one had touched it. My mother stood by the tree, coffee in hand, directing the gift distribution like a conductor. She called out names while Benji and Kelly handed out the boxes. Mila and I stood quietly by the doorway. She looked up at me and smiled nervously, the way kids do when they're trying to convince themselves everything will be fine. "Mila's name hasn't been called," she whispered after the third round of presents. I nodded, keeping my voice low. They're probably saving the best for last. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. 10 more minutes passed. Each cousin received a pile of gifts. Even Theo, who barely showed up to family gatherings, handed his grandson a toy car with a proud grin. Mila still had nothing in her hands. Benji finally noticed and walked over. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Did Mila's gifts get mixed up or something?" My mother didn't flinch. "Number. There aren't any gifts for her." Benji blinked. "What do you mean?" "She doesn't need anything from this house," she said, turning away to refill her coffee. "That child is being raised with no discipline and no respect. Rhea lets her speak like she's equal to adults. That's not how we do things in this family." I stepped forward, my voice low and controlled. "Mom, she's a child. She's 9. You don't get to punish her for how you feel about me." "She needs to learn that the world doesn't reward bad behavior." "What behavior are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Because she made a painting for you? Because she's kind?" My mother turned and looked directly at Mila. "You don't get praise just for showing up. You don't deserve to be celebrated." I looked down at Mila. Her face was pale. Her lips were pressed into a tight line. Her eyes were glassy, but she didn't let a tear fall. She just stood there, hands at her sides, like she was trying to disappear. I wanted to pick her up and walk out right then, but I was frozen. The kind of frozen that comes when the pain is too familiar. I had stood in that exact spot as a child, hearing the same tone from the same mouth. It was like history was playing out all over again, only this time I wasn't the one being torn down. It was my daughter. Benji looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. He shifted uncomfortably, then offered Mila one of his gifts. "You can open this one," he said. "It's just a scarf, but it's warm." Mila shook her head and whispered, "It's okay." She walked to the couch and sat down alone. The kids went back to playing. The adults pretended nothing had happened. I stood there, fists clenched at my sides. my heart pounding in my chest. The urge to fight, to scream, to pull Mila into my arms and shield her from everything in that room was overwhelming. But I stayed still. I stayed still because I knew if I started, I wouldn't stop, and I couldn't make this moment worse for her. Later, when things quieted, I brought Mila her coat and motioned toward the front door. "Want to take a walk?" I asked. She nodded. We stepped outside into the snow. The world was quieter out there. The cold air bit at our cheeks, but at least we could breathe. We walked past the hedge and stood at the end of the driveway. Mila looked up at the sky, gray and heavy with more snow. Then she looked at me. "Is it because I'm not good enough?" she asked. I bent down to her level, placed both hands on her shoulders, and said, "No. You are good. You are kind. You are strong. And you are everything I wish I had been brave enough to be when I was your age." She nodded, but I saw how hard she was working not to cry. That's when we heard it. The doorbell rang. We turned around. Through the frosted glass, we saw my mother open the door. And there, on the porch, stood a man in a long coat, holding a clipboard, with two people behind him carrying cameras. Then he said the words, "I'll never forget." "We're here for the young hero. Is Mila here?" My mother stood frozen at the door, staring at the man on the porch like he had just interrupted a royal banquet. He held a clipboard in one hand and wore a navy winter coat zipped to his chin. Behind him, two people adjusted a shoulder camera and microphone gear. A small van sat idling in the driveway, its side marked with the logo of a local news station. The man cleared his throat. "We're with Everyday Champions. We're looking for a young girl named Mila. She's our December honoree." My mother blinked, still holding the door just halfway open. "Excuse me." She was nominated anonymously for her work with the Lincoln Elementary Coat Drive and for helping organize donations to the Willow Creek shelter. We received a letter and photos of her work, and after reviewing her story, we selected her as our Young Hero of the Month. From where we stood in the driveway, I could see Mila's confusion. She took a step back, clutching the sleeve of my coat. "Is this really for me?" she whispered. I bent down to her level. "Yes, baby, it's for you. Do you want to go meet them?" She nodded slowly, then reached out to take my hand. Her fingers were ice cold, but she held on tight. We walked together through the front gate and up the snowy path. The camera crew noticed us and began to set up quickly. The man with the clipboard smiled warmly and stepped forward. "You must be Mila," he said, kneeling slightly to her height. "We're so glad to meet you." Mila's voice was quiet but steady. "Hi. My name is Chris. This is Janelle and Rob," he said, gesturing to the crew behind him. "We just want to ask you a few questions and present you with something special. Is that all right?" Mila looked at me for reassurance. I gave her a small nod. Chris reached into his satchel and pulled out a shiny red gift bag with gold tissue paper poking from the top. Then he handed her a white envelope sealed with a gold sticker. "This is a gift from one of our local sponsors. And this," he said, pulling out a thick certificate with her name printed in bold letters, "is your Young Hero Award." Mila looked down at the certificate. She read her name out loud, her voice catching just slightly. "For making a difference through kindness, compassion, and courage." Her eyes lifted. She was still holding her breath. Chris crouched beside her and said, "You matter. What you did mattered, and we want the world to know that." Behind us, my mother stood stiff in the doorway. She hadn't spoken since opening the door. Her eyes moved between me, Mila, and the camera crew, like she was watching something unravel that she couldn't stop. No one was paying attention to her. For once, the room didn't revolve around her approval. Benji came outside, stepping around the camera cord. He looked at me, then at Mila. "Wait, is this for real?" I nodded. "She was nominated. Someone saw what she did at school." He smiled, pride slowly blooming on his face. "That's amazing, Mila." She smiled back at him. It was the first time that morning I saw her face soften. Janelle motioned toward the front yard. "Do you mind if we film her by the tree out here? The lighting's perfect." Mila looked at me again. "Do you want to?" I asked. She nodded. "Okay." The crew got into place, and Mila stood in front of the tall evergreen tree covered in snow. Chris handed her a small microphone. She held it like it was something precious. He asked her about the coat drive, how she got the idea, what made her want to help. "I just didn't want anyone to be cold," she said. We had coats at home we didn't need, so I asked my teacher if we could collect more. Her voice was small, but it carried, and it was sure. No hesitation, no apology. My eyes welled with tears. She wasn't just answering questions. She was standing tall in her truth. When they wrapped the interview, Chris leaned in and whispered something to her. Mila turned to me and said, "He asked if they can use it on the evening news." My mother finally stepped out onto the porch. "What kind of media stunt is this?" she asked sharply. Chris turned to her calmly. "It's not a stunt. It's recognition. She earned this." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. She didn't say another word. I put my arm around Mila and looked straight at her. "You didn't need this to prove anything, but I'm glad they see what I've always known." And for the first time that day, I saw my daughter believe it. We stood in the snow as the camera crew packed up their gear. Mila still clutched her award with both hands, her gloves slightly damp from the cold. She kept looking down at it, then back up at me, as if she were trying to make sure the moment was real and not something she had imagined. Chris walked over and shook my hand. "She's a special kid," he said. "This kind of kindness at her age, most adults haven't figured it out." I smiled. "She teaches me more than I teach her." As they finished loading the van, Chris turned to Mila one last time. "You're the reason this program exists," he said. "We'll air your segment next week. Keep making the world better." Mila nodded, her face calm and glowing. "Thank you." The van pulled out of the driveway. The camera crew waved as they drove away, leaving tire tracks in the soft snow. We turned back toward the house. I expected Mila to want to leave, to go home and wrap herself in a blanket far away from all of this. But she surprised me. "Can I go back inside?" she asked. "Are you sure?" I said. "We can go if you want." She stood up a little straighter. "I want to go in." So we did. Inside, the living room was quieter than before. Some of the kids were still playing with their toys, but the energy had shifted. Benji sat on the couch, phone in hand, probably already texting people about what had just happened. Lorraine was standing near the fireplace, arms crossed tightly, watching us. Mila walked straight past her. She didn't look for approval. She didn't ask permission. She picked up the gift she had painted, the one my mother had ignored, and carried it into the center of the room. "I made this for Grandma," she said to the room, not just to my mother. "I wanted it to be special." Then she walked over to the mantel, carefully unwrapped the painting, and set it against the wall where everyone could see it. The glitter shimmered in the light. The cardinals perched on their white branches looked like they belonged there. No one spoke for a moment. Then Kelly, my cousin, said, "That's beautiful, Mila." Benji stood up and added, "It's more thoughtful than anything I've ever given." A few others murmured agreement. One of the older cousins clapped lightly. Mila didn't smile. She didn't need to. She wasn't performing. She was standing in her worth. Lorraine finally spoke. Her voice was flat. "You didn't need to put that there." Mila turned to her, eyes steady. "I wanted to." My mother didn't respond. She stared at the painting like it was something foreign. Like she couldn't recognize what was in front of her. I stepped in. "She's not asking you to love it. She's showing you who she is. You don't have to hang it up, but you don't get to make her feel invisible anymore." My voice was quiet, but it was firm. The room went still. No one interrupted. For once, no one came to my mother's defense. They just watched. Lorraine slowly turned away and walked into the kitchen without another word. I exhaled. Mila came over and took my hand again. She looked up at me, her cheeks pink from the cold, her eyes clear. "Can we stay a little longer?" she asked. "Of course," I said. She sat down beside her cousins and started building a tower out of toy blocks. Kelly's daughter handed her a small figure to put on top. They began playing like they'd known each other all along. For the first time that day, Mila didn't seem like a guest. She didn't look lost or out of place. She looked like she belonged, not because anyone gave her permission, but because she had claimed the space herself. I stood back, watching her laugh with the other kids, her shoulders relaxed, her joy unfiltered. And I thought about how much strength it took to stay soft in a world that tried to make you hard. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight. She just showed up, offered kindness, and held her ground. And somehow, that was louder than anything I could have shouted. My daughter didn't need gifts to be worthy. She didn't need validation from anyone in that house. But in standing tall, in walking back inside, in sharing her heart without apology, she turned the whole day around. She didn't just get recognized, she reminded everyone what grace looks like. That night, after the snow had stopped and the sky cleared just enough to show a few stars, Mila and I sat in our small living room back home. Our tree was lit with soft yellow bulbs, ornaments tilted slightly from where the branches sagged, and underneath it sat a single red box, the one Mila had received from the Everyday Champions crew. She hadn't opened it yet. She sat cross-legged on the rug, her award certificate resting beside her like it was part of her now. I brought her a cup of hot cocoa with extra marshmallows and set it down beside her. "Want to open it now?" I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but still glowing. "Can we do it together?" I nodded, sat down beside her, and watched her carefully unwrap the gift. Inside was a small blue tablet with a silver case. There was also a note tucked under the lid. Mila read it out loud. To Mila, for reminding us all what generosity and courage look like. Keep creating, keep leading, and keep being you. She smiled and closed the box gently. "I think I want to make a website," she said, "for kids who want to do projects like the coat drive. Maybe I can help other schools get started too." I looked at her, amazed, but not surprised. "You already are helping. You've helped me more than you know." She leaned against my shoulder. "Even if Grandma doesn't like me, it's okay." I wanted to tell her that wasn't true, that maybe my mother would come around, that people can change, but I didn't. I told her the truth. She doesn't get to decide your value. She never did. Her love has always come with conditions, and you deserve better than that. Mila nodded once, then closed her eyes and rested quietly. I held her close and let the silence fill the space between us. In the days that followed, the video of her award ceremony aired on the evening news. Her teacher emailed us to say the school planned to present the segment at the next assembly. A few parents from her class reached out, asking if their kids could help with her next donation drive. People saw her. They didn't just see her smile or her politeness or the quiet way she carried herself. They saw her strength, her spirit, the kind of leadership that doesn't shout but still moves people. As for my mother, she never said anything about that day. Not when we left, not in the days that followed. The painting Mila left on her mantel stayed there. I saw it in a photo someone shared from New Year's Eve. Maybe she kept it for show, maybe not, but I didn't ask. I no longer needed her explanation. For years, I had carried the weight of my mother's approval like it was a finish line I could eventually cross. That day in her living room, when she looked at my daughter and said she didn't deserve to be celebrated, something inside me finally gave way. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. I had spent too much of my life shrinking to keep her comfortable. I wasn't going to let my daughter inherit that legacy. Mila changed that, not through confrontation or rebellion, but by simply being who she was, with open hands and a full heart. She reminded me that you don't need permission to be worthy. You don't need a title or a trophy or the right last name. Sometimes all it takes is one person standing in their light to remind everyone else how far love can go when it's given freely. That Christmas didn't turn out the way I imagined. It turned out better. My daughter walked through a room full of indifference and left it shining with grace. She didn't just survive rejection, she transformed it. And that, more than any wrapped box under any tree, was the gift. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone brave, someone overlooked, or someone who shines in quiet ways, please share it. There are so many kids like Mila in the world, kids who give more than they take, who love even when they're not loved back. Let's make sure they're seen. Let's make sure their light spreads. If you've ever felt unseen or made to feel small by the people who should have protected you, I hope Mila's story reminds you of one thing. Their inability to love you properly was never a reflection of your worth. Thank you for watching. If you found value in this story, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts or similar experiences. And if you want more real, emotional stories like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. You are seen, you are worthy, and your story matters. I'll see you in the next one.